Have you ever wished you could eavesdrop on a conversation with a millionaire? My name is Michelle Thompson. I'm a retired project controls engineer and business professor, and that's exactly what I'm going to do in this podcast. I get to ask the questions that everyone else wishes they could. I'm going to find out exactly how they were able to build their empires through automation and outsourcing. And I'm going to break it down in a way that helps you build your business to run on autopilot. Don't miss out on Automate to Dominate. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Automate to Dominate. Today's guest is Kevin Snow, and he owns Time on Target. He is the automation expert. Did I say something wrong? You're looking at me weird.
Nope. I was just moving something onto my screen so I don't forget to say it later.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm a high C, so I like prepare and I'm like, oh, I gotta make sure I mention these things. I want to say this. So
okay, awesome. So now that you guys have already met Kevin.
Hi.
Hi, Kevin is going to talk to us about automation. He is like the king of automation. And the awesome part is it's not so much just automation. He's actually going to walk us through the entire sales process using automation, which is freaking amazing. And I would imagine you're probably going to talk to us about Entreport. But before we dive into that, Kevin, please give us a little bit of background. Tell us about the military history, and then how did you end up starting this company and getting into automation?
All right. So I've actually had my company Time on Target for 10 years now. So it's not like a new thing, but it's gone through a lot of evolutions and changes over the years. I actually started my sales experience, started right out of college. I'm supposed to be, if I would be doing what I went to college for, I'm supposed to be a high school agriculture teacher and wrestling coach. So didn't do that. Got hired right out of college working for a long distance data company, a nationwide telecommunications firm, doing client support and sales. So I went through their sales program, learned how to sell their products, learned all, I can tell you how a T1 works and where it connects and all that fun stuff. I know all these network things. Did that. Then I moved from there and worked with Nextel when they launched in the market, became their number one salesperson for the market, President's Club for the country, and had a lot of fun. Again, more technology, and this became much more application based on how working with clients on how to use a cell phone to actually generate revenue, as opposed to what most salespeople at the time were doing was just selling out of, hey, I can save you $5 a month per phone, or we have free equipment for you. I'm like, how about I actually charge you 3 times as much, but we help you generate $15,000 in revenue. Would that be good? So I went from there. Then I did some independent stuff. Actually started a BlackBerry app company at one point, building stuff for Nextel phones. Finished that, and then did the B&I thing full time. So supporting networking and teaching. That's kind of where I got my coaching background, because that was a lot of working with small business owners on how to network and how to build relationships, and learning how to work with them so that they had the idea that I wanted them to have and implemented the things I wanted them to do to make their networking work better. And that's really how Time on Target came about, because I was really good at launching chapters and launching big chapters and doing it quickly, that other regions were hiring me. They're saying, hey, you need to come teach my team, teach them your process. Surprising that there's a process in there, right? So I would fly around the country and I'd go to different regions and I'd teach them how to launch a chapter. And I had, at that point, it was like, I need to start a company because they're paying me to do this. And I need some place to send the payments, so it's not just coming to me. And there's that veil and that whole thing. So Time on Target was born. And then I started doing trainings for corporations and different organizations and speaking at conferences and doing all that fun stuff. And then I deployed. And I went over to Iraq and I was there for 9 months, got to spend time there, saw the whole country, Saddam's palace. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, this is really kind of cool. His son's palaces were smaller, but equally amazing. And I got to go to Afghanistan. So lots of cool things. But when I came home, I had absolutely nothing in my pipeline. There was no speaking gigs lined up, no one that I'd been talking to about planning stuff. And it was like, oh crap, but with more colorful language. And I was like, now what do I do? And I knew that I wasn't employable anymore because I'd been self-employed and had tasted that freedom for a while, that the whole 2 weeks of vacation weren't going to happen for me. So
get the entrepreneurial bug, did you?
Yeah, I'm like, I can take off on a Friday afternoon for a long weekend if I want to. Awesome. But so I had really kind of two options. I could either restart the speaking thing and keep doing that, or I could pivot my company and figure out a way to make something that could scale. And I talked to one of my really good friends who is a national director for one of the BNI countries in BNI over in Europe. And we were talking about what I was doing, and he helped me realize that my speaking thing, I was really the product, and it wasn't scalable because it was me. And if I'm gone, the company's gone. And I need to figure out something where I can actually scale a company. So if I'm gone for a bit, everything keeps going and I still make money.
Right.
Yeah. Good concept. I'm like, well, that makes sense. Why didn't anyone tell me this before?
Passive income is great.
Yeah. Well, even active income is awesome, but it just can't be around me having to do things.
Right.
So I pivoted the company to consulting. And the goal was to build a consulting firm where we actually had teams of consultants working with tech firms that were on a growth trajectory and helping them actually launch their sales teams. So we went into companies, and usually our best clients were the CEOs that were self-aware and knew that they were nerds and geeks and techies, and they could sell the crap out of their product, but they didn't know how they were doing it and knew they couldn't manage sales teams, or that they didn't have the experience to launch their own. So we'd come in and help them write the job description, figure out training, teach them how to interview and hire salespeople. We'd help them map out their sales process and figure out why what they're doing is working. We'd training, and then we teach them how to manage salespeople, because that is a little different than managing software people.
Yeah, a little bit of a different personality there.
Exactly. So we teach them all these things, and it'd be great. It'd be like a 6 to 9 month engagement process. It was awesome. But I found certain things that became choke points for me. Like when I'm doing interviews with a client for their salespeople, I couldn't have any other clients active because all my time was doing interviews. And we'd usually hire 3 to 5 at a time for the company. So it wasn't like, we're going to hire a salesperson, see how it goes. Nope, we're jumping in. You're going to have 3. And one of them's going to get fired and 2 you're going to keep. And then you'll replace the third one. So.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. So I started niching down, and I found that the parts I liked the most were the process piece and figuring out why their clients buy from them and how they were selling and making the two match. So we started really working on that piece. I could work with more clients at once. The engagements were shorter, but they were paying me the same. So that was also cool. And then I had the next realization that, all right, Kevin, you're dumb. You've been bringing in all these other people to do all the tech side of the process. So the CRM work, the automation work, scheduling tools, proposal tools. When I knew how to do it all and I was doing it for my company.
I was going to say, that's like your thing.
It is now, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I need to put a stake in the ground and say, these are the services that I work with, and start working with them. Because I wanted to be the agnostic consultant that helped them pick what was best for them. Like, yeah, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're picking these 2 CRMs, these couple email ones. So I had a high tier and a low tier, and I kind of had 2 of each for a while. And now we're really just focused on that and the how people apply technology to their business, And we do the sales process stuff, but we also have done some operational process things. So the tools I use are flexible enough that we've done hiring processes, so where you can track the interviewees or the candidates through just like a pipeline you would for sales. We can do that for the interview process.
Oh, cool.
And see where they go. We've done project management tools, custom project management build outs for construction firms. So it all integrates with their CRM and their email. So that's really our focus now, is that tech piece and putting it into a process.
So when a client comes to you, typically what are their pain points? Because I'm sure they're not like, Kevin, I need software, right? I'm sure they have like a pain point that they're coming to you, and you see the solution, but what do you hear all the time from your clients, and then how are you able to help them?
Oh, the biggest thing that all my clients have in common is that they're in a growth stage. They are growing, they're adding man count for their operations and fulfillment sides of the business. They're still doing all the sales piece, and they're trying to figure out how they scale and how they keep increasing revenue and how they stay sane. And that's really a big mental piece for them, is how do I maintain, I have a really cool wife and kids. I'd like to keep them, but I need to do all this stuff for the business and help. Yeah. And it's really, so it's really, most of them, it's like, all right, I need to figure out how I get more revenue. Do I need salespeople? And the cool thing with all the automation tools, that if you set it up right, you actually give them some more ramp before they have to hire salespeople. So where that CEO, COO, the leaders of the company can still keep selling, but we get rid of a lot of the redundant, repetitive tasks.
Okay.
And a lot of the content delivery, so that they can focus their sales activities on actual face-to-face engagements. And then everything else gets taken care of by the systems. And then they have that time to sell and still run their company. Awesome.
So walk me through that process. How does that work? Let's say, I'm Joe client and I'm scaling. I don't have time. How do you work your magic?
Oh, the first thing, and this is usually especially for scaling companies, we have to do this for them, is figure out how they sell. Even if it's a basic, here's the steps we go through and here's the major muscle movements that happen at each step of the way. More developed companies that already have some salespeople and have a lot of clients will get a little deeper and figure out how each salesperson is doing it differently and what's being effective, and start interviewing clients as well to get their feedback on how they experience that process. But for that growth company where the CEO is doing it all, it's really focused on, all right, you're selling, you're obviously killing it because your company is growing. How do we replicate your process? So it's really walking through, all right, how do you get a lead? How do you get a prospect? What do you do? And asking a lot of questions like, what do you say to them? And usually they all do that. Oh God, what did I say? I don't know what I say. Yes, you do, because you say the same thing. I know you do. It's just, that's what I do. But no one's ever asked them.
Right. They just do it automatically. It just comes natural to them.
Exactly. My favorite question has always been, what's the one thing that you say to a client that when you say it, you see the lights go on in their eyes because they get it?
Yep.
And they're like, oh, I've never been asked that before. I'm like, I know, that's why it's my favorite question. So it's those types of things, and getting those details of, hey, all right, so you get an initial meeting with the client. Now what do you do? I have to do these things. How are you getting that client scheduled? Are you calling back and forth, emailing? Are you using a scheduling tool? Does that scheduling tool pushing stuff to your CRM? Are you entering all that in by manually? What type of emails are going out? When are they going? Each step of the way, what content are you sending to them? Are you trying to send them the content? Or are you just kind of letting them sit there until the next meeting? All that follow-up stuff. When do you send proposals? What do you send in them? How do you follow up? What's your process there? And really mapping it out into all the little things that they have to do. And then we can go in and look, all right, so there you're entering user information, prospect information into 4 different systems. How about we make you enter it once and it goes everywhere? Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be awesome. Right. My secretary will love it if I'm not making her do that for me. So we look at all those types of redundant and repetitive things. Like when I was in sales, you would do the same email as a thank you to a prospect the first time you meet with them or after you have a second meeting. So usually it would be like a Friday afternoon, you'd be cutting and pasting these emails and you'd forget to change a name because you're really not paying attention. So I just sent a thank you email to Michelle, but said, thanks, Bob.
Right.
And then you're like, oh my God, what did I just do?
How do I recall? Recall,
exactly. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. So it's like, all right, so that's a repetitive task. How about those send out automatically 24 hours after you finish a meeting? Oh, we can do that? Yeah. So, and then we can attach content. So, what kind of content at that stage of the sales process do we need to send? There's specific types of content that match up with the buyer journey every step of the way. And we also will then use that same content. Some of it recreate, some they already have. We'll also throw that out on the websites for them and use it as drip campaigns and lead magnets. Because then when we can tell someone downloads a case study, they're at one of 2 different areas in the sales process. And we can score them accordingly and send them how we need to. Do they need to go to sales right away? Or do we just send them through a nurturing campaign?
So that's really interesting that you brought that up because so many of us, when you start out in business, you're like, okay, I need a tool to go do this. So they go find something, right?
Yep.
And then I need a tool to go do this. So they go find something. Like that's how my business is pretty much set up right now, right? So it's the classic duct tape together, right? So, I've got schedule once to do my scheduling and my pre-qualification questions. I've got my CRM in another system. I've got my, what's the thing that project management is another system. And so it's all kind of like together and not really talking. So at what point do we know, because a lot of us, right, we're trying to limp through until we get to that next level where we can, really, really do that. How do we know, all right, Michelle, it's time to bite the bullet and get this done?
All right. So I always tell people you need to track your time. You need to understand how you're using your time. There's really cool plugins that you can get for Chrome. There's plugins that you can load on your browser to work with Asana, which is one of the project management tools I like to use, where it'll literally track what you're doing and how long you're doing it for just by clicking a couple buttons up in your browser bar. So that's a great tool because then you can say, all right, so I'm spending 3 hours a week sending sales emails. All right, I'm spending this much time doing this type of stuff and really getting to that granular level. This serves a couple purposes. One, it allows you to track time that you're actually providing services. So you're able to tell what you're actually getting paid and start planning on, hey, here's what I need to charge so I make the right profit margin. But it also tells you I'm spending a lot of time doing data entry. I am a CEO of a company. I should not be doing data entry. Would Bill Gates do this? No, probably not. So it gives you a really good view into your business and you can say, all right, there's got to be a better way to get rid of all these things so that I can do more of the stuff that makes money. And even if you're just having that internal dialogue and you haven't tracked anything, if you think, hey, there's got to be a better way so I can spend more time doing these things, then it's time to look.
And so when we've had that dialogue with us, how do we get used to and prepare for the sticker shock?
Well, and it doesn't have to be sticker shock. And we work with our clients are growing, so they're not like Fortune 500 clients that have $30,000 for a CRM implementation. Yeah, that's fine. Would you like that in check, or we have petty cash? We can do that for you. You know, most of my clients are like, all right, we're growing. We have budget for this, but we don't have budget for this.
Right.
So we'll look at, for what we do for clients is we'll look at, all right, here's all the things that we laid out that we'd really love to do for you. Let's prioritize. And we'll figure out, hey, here's the one thing that's going to free up time for you and allow you to sell more. So I have a new client I'm bringing on that does merchant services. And we're looking at, all right, he's running a team of salespeople and he's selling. How do we help you manage your team so you know actually what they're selling and they're doing the right things at the right time? And we're freeing up time that you're doing for a lot of the email type stuff. So we're building out that sales process for him in a automation platform so that some of the things we talked about, the thank you emails with content after a meeting go out automatically, following up on a pricing being sent out with testimonials and case studies showing results. Those types of things just happen. One of the biggest things that wastes salespeople time is trying to find the right content. So if we can map that out, it frees up a ton of time that they're not now searching around like, I need to send stuff, you know, do I need a blog or can I find an article?
Right. Okay. So take me through, I clicked on a Facebook ad and I landed on your website and I clicked the button to get more information. Take me from cold prospect all the way through to sale. How does that work from the system side?
So it depends. It really depends on the company. So for me, I don't have time anymore with everything I have going with time on target and then Success Champions networking and the Success Champions brand in general to meet with everyone that says, send me info. Used to be, I would call all of them and follow up and have that conversation. So my process is someone downloads a lead magnet and I have 3 or 4 on my website. They all do different parts of the sales process and I have them mapped out accordingly. So they'll opt in, they'll get the lead magnet. My system will track, hey, did you actually download it? Did you click the link that we sent you? If they didn't, they get another email reminding them to get it. And then we start a nurturing campaign. And we start tracking their engagement with the emails, the content that we're sending them in those emails, if they're clicking through and getting them, if they're going back to my website, what pages they land on. So if they, for example, look at my case studies pages, they'll get a certain score. We'll put in their lead scoring system. If they go to my pricing page, they'll get a completely different score. And that usually, if they go to my pricing page, generates an email to me, hey, so-and-so is on your pricing page, you should follow up with them. Because that is a signal that someone's pretty deep in the buying process.
So when you do, these are scored automatically? You've already set them up? Okay, cool.
Yep, I have that set up in my automation system based on type of content, which campaign they're at. You know, if they open an email, I don't give them any points for just opening the email because that's really hard to track just in general. But if they click a link, I know they did that. So they'll get points for that. And then they'll get different points based on the type of content it is. And usually towards the end of the drip campaign, I'm either going to, if they originally went into content that was top of the funnel, where they're really just trying to figure out, hey, do I have this issue? Do I actually need to look at this? I'll try and push them to content that's deeper in the funnel and closer to helping them make a decision about doing something. Or I'll push them to a scheduling button where they then schedule a meeting with me. So once they do that, because that's the goal of all my drip campaigns is get an appointment with Kevin. Once they do that, it will update into my automation system. I have fields set up for the different types of meetings that I have on my Calendly account, and those all trigger different campaigns as well based on what type they're doing. So normally they all set up for me to run a meeting with them. once that meeting's done, 24 hours after the date of the meeting, they'll send a follow-up thank you email that's customized for that person and that type of meeting. And then it'll trigger specific tasks for me to do, depending on what the sales process is or what type of meeting it is. So if it's a virtual coffee, for example, I'll have certain tasks set up. Hey, follow up with this,
Now, is that going to your calendar or are you getting an email?
Usually it's an email saying, hey, you have this task.
Okay. All right.
And my automation tool works as a CRM and automation at the same time. So I can look at all my clients, all my deals that I have going and all my tasks right in one system.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's one of the things that sometimes business owners have trouble with is, they're getting inundated with emails. And so how do we not just skip over that email and make sure that we actually do it?
So there's a couple ways. One, I'm horrible at tasks in like Outlook. If you give me a task list in Outlook, I'll never check a damn thing off of it. No idea why. But like written down lists, I'm really good at. And then task lists in my CRM, I do. Outlook task lists, yeah, no, never, nothing ever gets checked off. It's just a red bar on my screen. So that's the benefit of the CRM piece is you can see your tasks that are due today.
Okay.
So you just have those that you can work through. And you can set up the tasks so that you don't get inundated so that they send at a specific time frame. So instead of sending it immediately when the task is created, you send it at, if I know it's just following up with a email or doing an introduction or something like that, I'll trigger that email reminder to go out a day before it's due.
So is there a way that people could take maybe a phased approach to this? Like instead of doing the whole thing, like for example, here's what's just going through my brain. So I'm an AppSumo fan. And so I love paying just once for a tool and then never having to pay a monthly fee. So I actually just got a project management. It's like nifty.pm, right? Something, I don't know. It works like ClickUp basically.
Okay.
So it's like if Asana and ClickUp and Slack had a baby, it would be Nifty.
Cool.
So like that's kind of all the, here's all the tasks for all the staff that need to be done. But what I'm horrible at, and I've said this for years and just never done anything about it, is I'm just horrible at email follow-up sequence. I'm horrible at dropping tests. I have them all, but that doesn't mean I've done anything with them, right? So what if I wanted to start with just from lead magnet to CRM to getting the content to the client, and then we end with my schedule once link. Yeah. Could you do like that for phase one? And then what would be like phase two? How do you get them together and get everything to talk?
So yeah, there's multiple ways that you can break out a project into phases. So I tend to, with a lot of my clients, I recommend that we do the sales process phase first. Mm-hmm. So Calendly or schedule once to your automation tool. Then the follow-up thank you email, and then, whatever those steps are. So there's usually at the initial one, there's usually only a couple emails that we do. We'll do the follow-up thank you. And then once a proposal is sent out, a testimonial email or an email that links to a testimonial page. Just because the goal is we want to shorten the process and get them generating more revenue faster. If the other way that you can do it is the drip campaigns first, the lead generation piece, and then get them to your scheduling tool. But my thought process is if we do the process first and we dial that in, you're going to close more of those leads.
Right.
So why burn leads when you're putting them into a bad or ineffective process?
Makes sense.
So, and then we'll usually go from there, and then, all right, so we now have this, we like it, it's going good, you're getting good feedback from clients. All right, now let's start filling your pipeline, because now you can handle the influx of leads, because that's part of the process thing of automation is we are trying to free up time so you can sell more. So if you don't have the time now, me just giving you a bunch of leads is going to overwhelm you. You're going to drop the ball. People are going to be mad because Michelle never called them back. And then when you do get follow-ups, like, well, I already made a decision because I reached out 3 weeks ago and you're just now calling me. So I like to do the process first, but I have clients that are like, hey, we are dropping the ball on the leads they have coming in already. So now we have to figure out, all right, so how do we handle that so that they're getting the touches right away? And we're tracking and making sure the right ones are getting to sales so that they aren't getting overwhelmed. Because there's this thing going on where sales says all the leads are crap and marketing says you don't call any of my leads, and they just fight about it because you don't call them all because they're crap. How do you know they're crap? You don't call them, and you have that thing.
Right.
So that's when we'll do for a phase one. All right, drip campaigns, nurturing, lead scoring set up so we can actually see which ones are the best ones to call, and we'll sort them out by business to consumer, to B2B, what type of individual they are, what their activities are, and then customize that and send it off to the sales rep. So they're only getting qualified sales ready leads.
So I want to back up because you said something that I didn't understand. So you said, taking something from your schedule once or your Calendly into your automation tool.
Yep.
What is that automation tool?
So my automation tool is Entreport. Okay.
And what is Entreport and what does it do for people who don't know?
So Entreport is just a marketing automation platform. It is like a HubSpot or Marketo. It's an all-in-one tool that does email marketing. It does behavioral tracking. It does landing pages. It does CRM capabilities. So you can take notes and log calls and meetings and all that stuff. And it's fully customizable. So it comes with your general fields, but then we build out all the custom stuff. So what I do is my Calendly, whenever a meeting's scheduled, I use Zapier to link the two. Mm-hmm. And Calendly basically pushes all that contact info and the meeting time and date and meeting type into Entreport. Okay. And fills out fields for me and generates, if they're not already in the system, it makes a new contact for them.
Cool. Okay.
And then that new contact will trigger a campaign based on a specific field being updated.
So now is your email marketing Entreport or do you have like Drip or Active Campaign?
Nope. I do it all out of Entreport.
Okay. Some people, like one or the other because of the functionality. And yep. With you being the tech guru, does Entreport have all the bells and whistles that makes it yep. easy for you to segment everything?
Well, yeah, it does behavioral tracking. So it'll track any interactions that a contact will have with your website, with your emails. It does the whole cookie thing.
I was going to say, how is it doing that with cookies? Okay.
Yep, it's doing the cookie thing. So I'm excited to see and kind of curious to see how they're going to transition as cookies are kind of falling out of the mainstream of the way to do that now. And there's some new things coming in. But it also will interact with Facebook and Google Pixels. So you can do that on your pages and you can interact with your build custom audiences. Yep. For Facebook. So you can send that over to Facebook and then create a lookalike audience based on that custom audience, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So a lot of that cool tools that it does. I can build landing pages, that whole thing. The biggest thing and the reason I love it and I don't change to any of the like Drip or Active Campaign or any of them is it allows for the human interaction with the client.
How so? How do you explain that?
So normally most automation tools are built around time triggers. So 24 hours, send this.
Right.
36 hours, now you do this. Well, in Entreport, you can have behavior triggers where, all right, we're going to wait for the client to do this thing. And then we're going to do something in response. Or you can set it up that, hey, I need you, Mr. User, to do something. So for example, for Success Champions networking, we set up triggers where Donnie has to do something. He has to approve a member when they're joining a new chapter.
Yep.
The context sits at that point in the campaign until Donnie does his thing.
Okay.
So this is huge in the sales world for sales process, because I can set up a task or a trigger that Mr. Salesperson needs to send a pricing. And when they mark that they've sent pricing, then the next action starts.
Yeah, and that's good, because I can tell you one of the things that I have that I know is an error, but I'm not sure how to fix it, is if I have so somebody goes to my schedule once and they've scheduled, and we had the Zoom link goes in, right? I click on the Zoom link, but they no show, right? And then I click out of it, it's going to send them a thanks for meeting with me email.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh crap, right? But you have the automation set up, but you're like, that's an if then, right? So that's kind of a cool human trigger, so that like if they don't show, you're not like, hey, it was great to meet you.
Yeah, so for that exact thing, when I have someone schedule a initial consultation with me, all that info comes into Ontraport. It generates a task for me that sits in Ontraport and is attached to that client. And if I know if they are scheduling a certain type, it'll actually generate a deal for me or an opportunity for me as well. That we start tracking. But once it doesn't send anything until I complete that task. So I have to go into the initial meeting task for Michelle and say completed, or I can put in actual custom results. So I can say, all right, here's my options: completed, rescheduled, no show, whatever I want, and have it trigger based on how I complete the task. So if I complete it as no show, sends them one meeting or one email. Hey, sorry you weren't able to make it today. Here's a link to your schedule, blah, blah, blah. If I mark it completed, then it sends, hey, it was so great to meet with you today, Michelle. I had a blast talking to you about whatever. And then here's our next steps.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. I know we're getting close on time. Are you okay if I pick your brain about one more thing?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right, cool. So what happens now? We've made the sale, right? How do I get all the tasks from the sale now to my employees so that they just go and do what happened? Do what's, let's say it's a podcast episode that needs done or something.
Yeah. So it depends.
Okay.
I say that a lot to clients too. It's like, well, there's like 5 ways we can do it. So if you're staying in, for example, for me, for Ontraport, it's flexible enough that I could have different campaigns and pipeline views for different things. So I could have one for a client, but then I could have a separate view that's just tracking the podcast production process, where then it triggers specific things, and hitting a closed deal just starts generating stuff. The other option is, if you're not using Ontraport for that project management piece, you're able to then use a tool like Zapier or webhooks or a few other things that I use to actually just send that information to like Asana and have it generate a new project.
Okay, so it would just create a new task in Asana, and then how do we know who to assign it to? Is that just part of the?
Yeah, you can set that up. So like when I have for blogs for the Success Champions website or articles for the magazine come in, it generates a task in a specific project, and I tell it who to assign it to. So for example, if the first task in your process for a new podcast client is to research podcasts that they can appear on, you probably know who's going to do that, because it's probably the same person on your team most of the time. You can actually set it up so that task goes to that person, and then how you have your dependencies set. Once that's completed, it'll generate all the other tasks.
Okay. Shoot, I thought of another question. And just like that, it's gone. That's awesome.
I do that all the time.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. Yep, it's gone. Not coming back. Okay. What other cool stuff did you want to tell us about?
Oh, I think there's probably a ton we could talk about. Yeah, we could easily have an hour and a half episode if we wanted. You had mentioned at the beginning the military piece and how it applied to business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a kind of a cool thing, because a lot of people I talk to don't understand that, they hear military and they think, well, you're shooting tanks, you're blowing stuff up. They just think of the combat piece.
Yeah.
They don't understand all the planning that goes into running a combat mission. It's not just like, we're going to go take that hill charge.
Right.
So that is one of the big things that I think is really cool, is that they spend a ton of money training us how to plan and how to take a task. You need to take that hill. All right, how do we do that? And we do this thing called backwards planning.
Yeah. Yep.
Where we start at the result, and for us, it's called the commander's intent. And the commander, our higher commander, will say, "Here's my intent. Here's what you need to do." And they're very specific: when, where, why, and well, not so specific on the how. That's our job. But applying that to business when we're planning things for companies, that's one of the reasons that, military officers are highly sought after for those senior level roles in businesses and corporations, because they understand how to do planning. Most small business owners go the other way. They're like, all right, so the first thing I need to do is I need to put up a website. Is that really the first thing you need to do? And they'll get so far in the process, and they're like, oh, this is all wrong, and they'll have to start over. Where if you start at the end result, you can go backwards. You can think of all those what ifs sooner in the process and take care of them as you're making the plan. If you go the other way, that what if could really screw up everything that happened before, and you have to redo it all.
Yep.
So that idea is key. And the other big planning thing that we've taken out of the military that I tell all my clients is it does actually two things. One of them is that an 80% plan right now is better than 100% plan too late.
Yeah.
And that's really good for people like me who are analytical and strategic thinkers and like to think about everything.
Analysis paralysis.
Yep. I'll just keep thinking. It's like, oh, I missed my application timeline because I thought about it for way too long. It's better to have a partial plan and be able to go start executing than to not have anything at all. And the reason that's really important is because we also teach our new officers that the enemy gets a vote.
Ah.
The best laid plan will not survive first contact with the enemy, which is kind of depressing as a planner, that we're going to spend a ton of time making this really cool plan and then it's going to change right away. But it still gives them the foundation for what they're supposed to do. And if we plan right, it gives them flexibility to adjust as the enemy does things. But the same was true in business. And in business, the enemy is the client.
Right.
The client never follows the sales process that you want them to.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Usually pretty close, but they're going to ask for things out of order, and they're going to do things that's like, oh, they're not actually where they should be. They've gone back a step in their process because something happened. So it's important to teach the salespeople and build into the process that ability to be flexible and adjust.
And I think that's where your brilliance comes in, because so many people will set it up with, A happens, therefore B, therefore C. Well, that's not necessarily true. A might happen, then C might happen, then B1 yep. might happen, and then B2, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's the cool part about, Donnie and I have talked about, how your brain works and everything. And it's just awesome. And like you said, I think the military had, well, hello, Luna. Luna's saying hi. I think the military, taught you, if you do backwards and right, it's never going to happen. the way you want it to. If it did, world peace would happen.
Yep.
Right? But I remembered my last question. Can I hop around for a second?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I've always wondered this, but never actually looked it up. I know Zapier pretty well, but I've heard about webhooks, but I have no idea, like, what's the difference between Zapier and a webhook?
Well, is it Zapier or Zapier?
I don't think anybody really knows.
So, because I say Zapier. So
Okay.
Zapier does, for the listeners, it's the same thing. She's West Coast. I'm Midwestern. We just say it differently.
Right. Potato.
Exactly. So you can actually do webhooks through Zapier. So,
okay, what does a webhook do, though?
A webhook is basically the easiest way to describe it is it's sending data to a specific URL. So it's called a package.
Okay.
And so at the end of the URL, you're going to see all this gobbledygook that is telling the system that owns that URL what to do.
Oh.
So normally, a lot of times it's hard written into code. So if someone like does an API and they code it out on their website to do things a certain way, software as a service does this a ton to send it between different nodes in their system. They'll write it in, and then the URL will get populated with all the inputs that need to go to the other system. And then it just gets sent automatically. So that is a way that some systems will take that information. Zapier sometimes uses webhooks, or otherwise they've built integrations with the API already, so it knows how to talk, and it can just send the info directly because it's already mapped. It understands all the fields and knows how to do the mapping. The webhook is more of a raw data send. So you're basically saying this field gets this field gets this information. It's going to go in this object or this portion of the system, and it has it all just shoved into a URL.
Very interesting. It makes so much sense now that you've said it. Okay, cool. And of course there was something else, and my brain is tired, and so it's just not working right. If somebody's listened to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I need Kevin to set this up for me, how do they get a hold of you? So,
couple ways. And I actually don't have my text message number in front of me right now, so we're going to give you a different option. So first, before they text me and get some, because I actually have some free stuff for them, I want to ask if they would do me a favor.
Okay.
And that favor is if they got any value out of this podcast today, I would love to have them share your podcast with one other person. I'd love to have them actually teach that person, hey, here's how you find Michelle's podcast. Here's how you listen to it, and check out an episode, and have them bring one more person to your show for you. And if they do that, then I'd love to have them just shoot me an email at info@time-on-target.com with your podcast name in the subject. And I will send them a PDF where it's going to have all the content by stage, so they can see what type of content works best in the general sales stages, as well as a list of questions that they can ask themselves and their clients as they're trying to map out what their sales stages are.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Guys, he just handed you $1,000. Just so you know. So definitely, first of all, I love the idea of the podcast. Thank you. That would be great. So guys, please like and share. But then again, it's info@time-on-target.com, and just put
Correct.
Automate to Dominate in the subject line, and then Kevin will hand you $1,000 of work.
Yep. Yeah, and it's basically the same stuff that I use when I work with my clients. So it's a great way to start that initial thought process of, all right, so how am I actually selling? How are my clients actually buying? And it's going to give you kind of a guideline of how to follow and what to do.
Awesome. That is amazing. I always ask this question at the end of every podcast. That is, if you were to go to a party and you ran into an entrepreneur who was scaling their journey, what book would you give them as a gift?
Oh, all right. So there's a couple that I love. Probably my favorite business book I probably read it like once a year just because it's really cool. Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz.
Never heard of that.
Oh, it's awesome. So it's basically, he's got a whole series of books, and this book is really geared on companies that are trying to scale.
Okay.
And making sure that they're getting the right clients in their customer base. And it really walks them through how to make sure that you're attracting the right clients, how to make sure you're keeping the right ones. And then if you have a bunch that aren't the right ones for a number of reasons, how to get rid of them. Uh-huh. So it's based on that whole concept of how the champion pumpkin growers grow those giant ass pumpkins.
Yeah.
There's a specific process for how they do it to make sure they grow big. And he basically took that plan and applied it to business, and he applied it in his business. And it's just really cool.
Who's the author again?
Mike Michalowicz. Please don't ask me to spell it.
No, that's fine.
Please.
Mike Michalowicz. Okay.
Yeah. So just Google Pumpkin Plan. He's got a ton of books out. His first one was Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, which is the whole idea of, hey, how do I start a business from just an idea and get like the initial clients? Pumpkin Plan is the next stage. And then he goes into Profit First, and then he's got another one coming out.
That's why the name. Okay. Yeah. So I've read Profit First, and that was an awesome book, and actually made me, it just, you read the book and you're like, oh, duh, why didn't I think of that before? Yep. but you're like, this is brilliant.
Yeah, that's pretty much how we did the Pumpkin Plan book too. I read, it's like, okay, this all makes complete sense. Oh my God. And I've done a couple workshops on it for networking, how to pumpkin plan your network.
Cool.
Different opportunities. So yeah, it's really cool. And it just makes sense.
Awesome. Okay. So I want to make sure that you were able to cover and touch everything that you wanted to. Did we hit it all, or did I miss something?
No, I think we had a really good conversation. I can't think of any other things that we need to talk about. So
yeah, I think this was awesome. I mean, this is by far, I shouldn't say this, but this is by far one of my favorite podcast episodes. So
awesome.
This has been a blast. So thank you so very much for your time. And guys, seriously, hit up Kevin again, info@time-on-target.com. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Michelle. It was great to be here, and thanks everyone for listening.
All right, that's it, guys, for this episode. We will see you in the next episode of Automate to Dominate. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Thank you for tuning in to the Automate to Dominate podcast at www.awesomeoutsourcing.com/podcast. My name is Michelle Thompson.
Hey guys, if you absolutely love this show, I would greatly appreciate it if you would head on over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star written review. That would be amazing. And as always, if you guys know somebody who should be listening to this podcast, please don't keep it all to yourself. Share it with your friends.